Laten we even beginnen met... Is there anybody in the room who does not speak Dutch? Okay, then we speak English.
Just does anybody want us to speak Dutch? Or not to speak Dutch? I know a bit of my medieval Swahili. I don't know if that's going to work, but we can try in English. So, yeah, we're going to talk about ADFS. And if you don't know ADFS, then I guess you can count your lucky stars. I'm not sure why you would be in this session, but we are trying to get everybody on the same page, up to speed on ADFS. This was first introduced in Microsoft's ecosystem in Windows Server 2003 R2. If you remember correctly, we had Windows NT4 server, Windows 2000 server, then they jumbled it around and became Windows Server 2003, and then later on, what we now know as 2022 and 2025 next month. And it was available only as an additional download. So you had to download the ADFS bits. Basically, you were downloading the Windows Identity Foundation, and that was specifically configured to act as an STS, a security token service, which is the term which is used in the RFC, in the official documentation for all this. Well, it's actually not RFC. I make that mistake all the time. RFC is for DNS and IP addresses and mostly on-prem stuff. Mm-hmm. But this is web, so this is Oasis, again. The slide says it correctly. And it was first introduced for organizations to work together. So you had one organization with SharePoint, and as Elephant liked to screw around with other elephants, you would have another organization that also uses SharePoint, and they would want to access each other's SharePoint. I don't know why, but for that specific scenario, Microsoft said, yeah, use ADFS for that, because it's all web, it's all fun, it's all games, and now we know better, at least about SharePoint.
Yeah.
And the fun thing is that if you look at ADFS, but also if you look at Entra today, it's only open protocols. So everything that you can talk to Entra currently is all open protocols. There is some Kerberos stuff in Entra, but it's not like domain joined to Entra yet. But it is something that you would want as an organization, that we've grown in the last 20 years to want as organizations, because it helps us to communicate and interrupt better with other organizations. And for me, but unfortunately we were being recorded, so I cannot tell you how I really feel about Active Directory trusts, but let me tell you, it's not very positive. And ADFS and Entra with external ID, of course, is a way better solution than any Active Directory trust ever was, especially in NT4. And then when we're talking about the open standards, it's things like SAML 1.0, SAML 1.1, SAML 2.0, Shibboleth. Anybody in education that came across Shibboleth in the last 20 years? Yeah, I know you would. Yeah. Still not an Enter. Nope, not supported, no plans. It's the first thing actually that I asked at the product team. So Shibboleth and Entra, we have no plans. I'm like, but if I ask you if you have plans about whatever, you said, yeah, we have plans. It's on the backlog, or it's on the backlog of the backlog, or the backlog of the backlog of the backlog. That was a joke. Now I can stay in the line again. But for that, no, there was no plans. All right. And of course, since Windows Server 2016, we have OAuth 2, OpenID Connect, and SCIM, where the S is for simple. Yes, not secure. Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, ADFS came there, and it allowed us to integrate with the Windows ecosystem. So I think that was one of the main reasons that many people really liked the idea of ADFS, because it supported Kerberos on one side, and it was modern authentication on the other way, on the other side. And well, kind of became popular for some reason. Well, it was kind of a quite expensive solution if you build it up the right way, because you could do stuff with the internal database, SQL-based, or use a separate SQL server. And the separate SQL server was when you tried to create something that was like, well, highly available. and you could end up in a range of like a minimum of 7 servers, I think, if it was truly
With interconnect servers thrown into the mix
with
as
the
well.
proxy servers
Yep.
and the
Yep.
ADFS servers. So, well, for large organizations, this was quite a nice solution, but could be expensive. So, well, it developed kind of like a standard. At a certain moment in time, I think it was like 6, 7, maybe 8 years ago, almost every organization that I came in had some form of ADFS running as their standard while moving into the cloud.
Yeah, and I heard about consultancy firms specifically still doing ADFS up to 4 years ago because that was what they knew, that was what they trusted, that was what they could. They had all their practices laid out, and they were like, we know it's not the right thing to do for our customers, but at least now we get that ADFS money, and then in 4 or 5 years' time, we're getting the Entra money too. So yeah, there's an entire ecosystem, we've used the word before, around the ecosystem itself.
I think one time I came at a client and they had, I think, like 40 or 50 ADFS servers.
Oh yeah, and multiple farms. Oh, we've seen that. Yep. Yep, if you've ever done anything with DigiD, as you can hear from the phlegm, it's a Dutch word. It's a system for government authentication. And if you want to do that with ADFS, you need an artifact resolution, and that's only available if you use SQL Server as the backend. Cool stuff. But we already have ADFS. Cool. Does it have a SQL backend? No. Let's build another one. Yeah, we want to separate it because it's customer stuff and employee stuff anyway. You say, oh, you guys have money. Good to know. All right.
Exactly. So, yeah, the nice thing about ADFS is that you could use it to federate. And the federation is with a trust relation, the claims provider trust. And I used to explain it in a way that you could relate it to what's currently happening when you want to buy a ticket for a football game. You need a ticket, but you cannot just go to the stadium to get in. To get a ticket, first you have to go to the ticket office. That's like the STS for ADFS. Identify yourself, get a ticket on your name, and use that ticket to go to the stadium where they check your ticket and they allow you in. And actually, what is between the stadium and the ticket office center, that's the provider trust relationship. So there is a trust relation between the office center, the ticket center and the stadium that allows the ticket center for you to sell you the right ticket.
Yes, but of course now you have to identify yourself at the STS. But what if you don't have a passport or an ID card yet or anything like that, or you have to get some? Well, that's where you can have another claims provider trust. So you would have an application with a relying party trust to one ADFS with another trust to, well, depends. Most people tend to say it's a downstream ADFS server. If you're very customer-minded, it would, of course, be an upstream ADFS server. But you can hop federation instances. You can hop STSs. And you can do that with multiple claims provider trusts. You just specify the ADFS or Keycloak or whatever STS the other organization has. And then with relay state, which is a really fun thing, is you can specify a really special URL that says you go to your STS, the STS creates the claim for my STS, which is then sent automatically to the application. So the only thing you need to do is click once and magically the application appears and you're signed in. But yeah, that's quite impressive, but with external ID, it's not really the same currently, at least. So there's something that you need to be aware of, that if you are to migrate your ADFS, look at those claims provider trusts, and you can then, in Entra these days, with the cross-tenant settings, you can specify the IDP of the other organization, just like that. At least you have it specified, then all you have to do is figure out how to do the relay state stuff. And then, of course, and there's API stuff now, since last month. There's API calls that you can use in Entra for all your claims issuance and claims transformation rules that you had in ADFS. It's not in the migration wizard yet. In Entra, there's a migration wizard. I'm going to talk about that soon. But you can now specify those claims transformations for your apps if you want to. So if you have an application that, for instance, is only available for your management, but you don't want the application to know that there's a group called, I don't know, VIPs of Management Co., I don't know, very high up people, then you can say, you know what, I'm going to create my own claim and say, this is, Bobo is true. I'm done. But yeah, then you go to Entra, and it's like, I don't want to use ADFS anymore. I'm going to get that application and integrate it with Entra. And Entra is like, what Bobo is true? So you have to specifically build that stuff. And not everything that you could do with ADFS is available, of course, in Entra.
Nope. Still a cloud service, so...
Well, it's funny, because if you look at the... and you can see that actually in the logging, if you authenticate in Entra, you could actually see some glimpses still of what is called STS AVO. So the evolution of the STS, evolution of ADFS. That's what Entra is for authentication purposes. And it's a highly optimized STS. Yes, optimized for cost for Microsoft. Entra currently runs about 400,000 CPUs worldwide. So yes, make an evolution that is optimized to use as little CPU as possible, as little resources as possible, that pays dividend for Microsoft.
Good idea. Now, ADFS had some smart things in it to make sure that couldn't be misused from the internet, because we all know that your domain controller should not be connected to the internet, but your ADFS somehow had to relate to the internet. Now, with ADFS, this was kind of solved with the ADFS proxy that was connected to the internet, and then the ADFS server, which was on your internal network. And still, you don't want that some external people were able to just lock out your accounts by attempting passwords. So there was a mechanism in ADFS, or there isn't a mechanism, I should say, in ADFS that called smart lockout that will block your attempts to log on to your account after a number of failed accounts before you log out the internal AD account, so people were still able to work. And usually you make sure that that is one less than the actual logout number on your AD configuration.
And this is where most ADFS pain is with the token signing and token decryption certificates. Because what we're seeing is that it has become lighter, but what we saw in the early days of ADFS is that if you had a token decrypting certificate or a token signing certificate that you used to specifically encrypt or sign traffic between your ADFS and the relying party or another ADFS, that certificate would be something that you would need to re-enroll or renew at least. And only if you specify relying party with the federation metadata, that information is automatically updated on the other side. If you specify it manually, like a monkey, then what you'll see is that you have to do that every year. Well, it's okay, you're a monkey, you know a trick, but it's still, you have to do it every year for every relying party trust that falls into that category. And it's a pain, especially, but nobody in this room, I can guarantee it, uses an HSM for token signing or token decryption certificates. And you should.
Yeah. You should.
You should. Then it becomes a real pain, because now you have to go and talk to your HSM on a specific way to get a new token decryption or token signing certificate, and then you have to input it in your ADFS, and then you have to get it across, at least for the public key, to the other side. So it is largely responsible for the reputation that ADFS has as a high-cost solution for something as simple as federation that always works with Entra. Yes, because Entra works with the federation metadata XML file, mostly.
So why did ADFS become such a huge success? Well, especially when Microsoft 365 came around. ADFS became a very popular solution for internal authentication to connect to the cloud service, where there was a trust relation between your local ADFS and Entra. Already, it was called Azure AD at the days. And yeah, started there, synchronizing the accounts. And then at a certain moment in time, we found out, well, maybe it's a good idea to synchronize the passwords as well, just in case your ADFS fails. I already said, well, if you want to have a fully available ADFS infrastructure, it was like 7 servers. Not every organization had like 7 servers. So still, they want to be able to get to their mail. So what you could do is, if the ADFS failed, if the passwords are there in Entra and you have them synchronized, you could just fall back to Entra and then authenticate to Entra with your same username and password to get to your mail and other Microsoft 365 services.
And of course, the lead credential detection in identity protection is something you only got if you have ADFS, if you turn on password sync underneath that as well.
Yeah.
But if you look at Entra, even today, and I already gave away Shibboleth, but what you see is that there's still some things that are in ADFS that are available there that you cannot do in Entra today, yet, if ever. So Shibboleth is one of them. Third-party MFA providers is an interesting one, yeah. Because even the most used MFA application or mobile app that is in use by education in the Netherlands is not part of that. So that's an issue. But everybody's on Surf Connect, and that's ADFS, so that's not an issue then. And of course, some claims transformations, although you can get around with that with dynamic group memberships. But it is something that if you go through your ADFS implementation, it is something that you need to be aware of, that if you don't look at this as much as possible at the start of your project, you might go into way more work and then actually find out at a later stage of your project that it was not possible anyway. That would be a shame. Well, at least you would have password hashing turned on.
Yeah. So it was the most popular solution for all those organizations, but along the way we found, at least Microsoft found, a way to make Entra the most viable solution and more trustworthy solution than ADFS has ever been. And we're kind of moving into a more and more federated and cloud-based solution. So, well, ADFS was growing in the local organization with the number of relying party trusts to all those applications. And its importance was growing, and more organizations were looking at ADFS. Well, this is a single point of failure, and we have to be sure that it keeps running. And if something just keeps running, well, maybe it better be not your local ADFS infrastructure, but let's move to Entra.
And then, of course, we had attacks growing, where adversaries would gain access to the certificate material of your ADFS so that they could set up their own ADFS and redirect your users there. Because, as I said, nobody uses HSMs for ADFS certificates, or at least not token signing, token encryption certificates.
Yeah, and then you run into, well, challenges, because maybe you had things set up to make sure that you could monitor all the security around your ADFS, and you want to make sure that you do the same thing with Entra. Well, Entra does a lot, probably, but does it differently. And it's not always such that you can connect whatever you had to Entra. The other challenge is in the customizations that you had in your relying party trust for your applications, that Entra became more flexible over the years. but does not provide all the flexibility that ADFS once had, or currently has still. So are your SaaS providers and all the other applications you're connecting able to connect to Entra? Well, at least Microsoft is trying to help you in that process. We will show that in a minute. And of course, if you're dealing with external parties that are using your ADFS to connect to those applications, things will change. It will be a completely different game when you want them to connect to Entra instead of your ADFS.
It's such a silly world. Last time I checked, IBM's Curator and McAfee's Theme solutions still don't support Entra. It's like,
okay,
wow, why?
I don't know.
Why? Entra support for VMware vSphere is 802 update 2, which is quite recent as well. ADFS is in there since vSphere 7. So if you're still using vSphere, if you can still afford the licenses, that is, and you want to do it with Entra instead of ADFS, you still have to upgrade to at least 8.0 update 2, and we're on 8.0 update 3 at the moment.
Yeah. And the other thing that's happening today, of course, is that kind of many organizations are looking at zero trust as the new way to make sure that you're in control of who is accessing the data and the applications that you have in the cloud. So, you're shaking your head?
Yeah. Yeah, you can do zero trust if you still have ADFS. You have inbound firewall rules, you have systems, you have basically non-scalability, which is fine if you have 5 users using it, but if you have an organization with thousands of users, you probably want some more scalability. You can have 1,500, I know you can have 1,500 peak authentication per ADFS server with 4 free CPUs and 16 gigs of RAM, but still, you can have a service freely available if you really need it to be with, what are the current numbers? Because we updated them. 70 Azure regions with over 190 networking connections. That's just a tad more than most organizations here in the Netherlands. So yes, this is more scalable, more highly available, more redundant. And I have never heard of an ADFS implementation that was free. Just to be sure.
Nope. Well, especially not when you're having the multiple SQL servers on the back. Then the prices may go up. Yeah, so zero trust is one of those reasons. The other reason why you want to move to Entra is because of the identity protection features in there. Because Entra will keep track of what's happening with your identities. If your identity is now trying to log on from Amsterdam and an hour later from New York, something will trigger. And it might highlight your account that something fishy is happening, or request the account to change their password or use MFA for that reason. And
whoa! Something you're specifically pointing to phishing already? What are you working for, the Dutch police or something? Wow! All right. If you want to play it that way, could be phishing, yeah. But at least in Entra Identity Protection, you can flag it as not being malicious, and then the machine learning can actually learn that some IP address that a couple of users are using because they come from different places, and then from the same egress IP address, then the machine learning will know probably that's the egress address of your VPN connected application. Yeah.
And then there is, of course, conditional access in Entra that will help you to be more in control, so you can require only your managed devices to enter certain resources or applications, or require MFA, or require
or combinations.
Like
how hard was that in ADFS?
Sorry?
How hard was that in ADFS? And this and that, and something from your user, and something from the device. Well, welcome to ADFS. We have rich claims authorization. Oh, heck, this is hard. Yeah, and then the conditional access is just, oh, like that, I like that, I like that. Boom, there it is.
Yeah. So there's multiple reasons to look into Entra. Um, there are some requirements also for Entra. You already mentioned that you might have to sync your accounts. That's also probably the case when you use ADFS with cloud services from Microsoft. And you already had your infrastructure in sync. Used to be the Entra Connect sync servers. And we're now kind of moving to the cloud with Cloud Sync, which
You might be, yeah.
which still has, well, not all the functionality that you currently have from the sync server, but it's
So
moving.
why does this slide say you need Entra Connect? Why can't I do this with One Identity or other synchronization solutions? Well, ADFS offered that cute little feature where you can change your password if it has expired. So if I want to do that with Entra, I would need something like self-service password reset, okay, and password write back to Active Directory. Write back features are only, by Microsoft supported, in Entra Connect Sync and Entra Connect Cloud Sync. So third-party solutions are, because ADFS is going away, because other federation solutions are going away, you'll see these third-party integrations go away as well, and you'll see third-party synchronization solutions go away as well, which is, from an architectural point, I think that's something that we don't want, because now we have to go from our IGA solution to Active Directory, then from Active Directory, which is a database or an account store, to Entra Connect, which has a database, which is, well, not an account store, but a person store, let's call it that, and then to Entra, which is another account store. Now I have this entire synchronization chain that can fail at any moment at any chain in a link. So yeah, it's not something that we want, but it is kind of the reality that you should be aware of.
And the other reality that you have to be aware of is that Entra is a cloud service. So if you were using ADFS, well, it changes like once per 3 years when the new version of Windows Server comes out. Entra is a different beast. It changes like every 3 days, or three changes per day even.
On average, yeah.
On
And these
average.
guys are on holidays in August, as we noticed.
Yeah. So except for during the holidays, 3 things per day are changing, and you have to keep up. Because sometimes things may break over time if you don't move with what's happening in Entra ID. And that's something that you have to keep in mind. It requires a different mindset.
And it's the same, but different than ADFS. Yeah, because I guess it was 2015, 2016 that we demoed with bring your own device with claims transformation rules and things like that. And you remember how hard that was? We made we had a little demo, we had a little web application. The only thing the web application did was, and I think we built it from scratch from Windows Identity Foundation then as well, was just dump all the claims. Yeah. And we had to make our own claim rule to make that happen. We had to actually type something just to be able to have all the claims done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch, because I'm going to demo, I'm going to switch to the demo environment. I don't see the same things you do because I'm here, and I don't want you guys to have to look at my back when I do the demo. Let me see if I can get a mouse over there somewhere. That's not even a mouse that works, I guess.
I once joined the big mouse club. This is a small mouse pointer, okay? I think.
Oh, right. Raymond is part of the big mouse cursor club. He's always compensating. I don't know why. But what I want to show you is if we go to, this is the Entra portal, by the way. I don't use the Azure portal anymore. That's for dodos. And what I do is I can have conditional access, and I can have conditional access policies right here that I can use to secure access to applications, all applications, specific people, things like that. And there's some really nice templates that I can use that are just at my fingertips that I can just use. So for instance, if I want to have multi-factor authentication for everything that is Azure management, then there's a review create done. And if I want to have a policy that is a bit more specific, so for instance, I need to give it a really good name. There we go. And then I have to get some users. I can select all users, select users in groups, or all users, and then exclude some because I just don't like them, for instance, or if they have a directory role. So this is something that applies to everyone except for this is a nice one, the tenant creator. No, the usage summary reports reader. That's the one. And then I can say the target resources. And this is fun because Cloud Apps is default, but I can also have user actions like register security information or join devices. I have global secure access, of course, and I have authentication context. But let's just do it with a Cloud App and just say that I want to have a select app, and this is not the one.
No, something went wrong there.
Yeah. I don't have the permissions? Oh, okay, cool. Then what I'll do is I'll use a user action, and let's do this for register or join devices. And yep, it says right. I can tell which network it is on and make that apply or not, make that a condition. And there's other conditions that I can use. So user risk, sign-in risk, insider risk is now new. Locations, client apps, filter for devices. So if I know the device name of the guy I don't like, I can specify it here, and it only applies when he logs on that device. That will really screw with him. That will teach him not to screw with me. And then I can grant access and give all sorts of conditions on whether or not he can gain access based on these conditions. And then, of course, if I want to really do something neat, then I can say, you know what, for this one, the sign-in frequency, let's check it. It's grayed out, huh?
Something.
Yeah, I don't.
Permissions.
I have to get all users here first. I guess some things are only applicable to all users, but you can see how easy it is to get a conditional access policy, at least from a template. So let's go back to the overview and let's go back to the slides. No, you know what? Let me talk about identity protection too. It's also on the protection because I've shown you the option for user risk. There's also device risk and things like that. It's device compliance actually, but in user risk, I can actually give you a policy, and that there is one by default that I can use. Is I can say that if a user risk is high, then I can do something. I'm sorry, let's high, done, thank you. And then I can say if your user risk is high, then I allow access, but I require a password change, for instance. And this is something that I can do with identity protection. The fun part is that I'm targeting a user risk policy, and there's a user risk policy and a sign-in risk policy. So what you'll see is that multiple malicious or suspicious sign-ins will eventually come together in a suspicious user, so a user risk. But a user risk can also be something that is just comes from Microsoft, comes from Defender for Identity, comes from wherever, and it could be from the leaked credentials detection that Microsoft has. Yeah. So if you have that password sync on, even though everybody still authenticates with ADFS, if you still have the password sync on, then for every password that is leaked through the internet, what you'll see is that Microsoft will get that clear text password. They will get it through MD4 to get the AD hash, then 1,000 times SHA-256 to get to the Entra hash, and then compare those two values. And if they're the same, they say, wow, your credentials are leaked. You now have a high user risk, and that's why that option to
change password.
To change the password is there. Yep. Yes. But only if you have password write-back enabled. All right, we've talked about ADFS. I've already shown you a glimpse of what is possible in Entra. still, I have my pointer back, here we go. Let's now talk about getting rid of ADFS.
Yes.
So about decommissioning this stuff. And there's a really easy 3-step process for this from Microsoft as well. This is what they say. You have to perform an inventory of your ADFS, then you have to prepare your environment for everything that you still lack, and then you can migrate. Well, sure, but there's also something like a business case, because otherwise I don't get a project. Let's document the heck out of everything, because we want to know what was there at the start, and most of an organization want to know what's there at the end of the project. Of course, there's things like cleanup. If you still leave your DNS records out there, people can still get them. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, let's look at this one. We already talked about them, right? I'm hacking the Dutch police now. Yeah, this is their ADFS. Because Microsoft knows it. And I can just get it. This is a free page from this guy, Dr. Azure AD. And I can just find out this stuff on the internet if I need to. If I want to know domain names, this is a demo that I'm going to just do it right now. Because I know a guy with a lot of domain names. Internet is real slow. It's cool. What's this? RayTheDJ.com? Really, Ray?
Really?
Really? All right, cool. All right, so you need to clean up that stuff because DNS records are also there, firewall rules may be there, backups may be there, all that stuff. Then, of course, the other thing that you want to do is, like, get the mouse pointer back, is to communicate everything. And it's interesting because when we create an inventory, for instance, yes, of course, we check for backups. Are the backups there? Dear backup admin, are backups there? Yes. Okay, let's try and restore them. What? We've never done that before. Then don't tell me you have backups if you have never tested them before.
Exactly.
Of course, you want to do credentials for service accounts, stuff like that, for if you have to rebuild stuff. The ADFS certificates, you want to export them. That means that even if you mess up your ADFS implementation beyond recognition, then at least with the certificates, you can get it back. All the information about the RPTs and the claims provider trust, of course, the smart account lockout settings. Most of this is all get-ADFS properties, by the way. Then ADFS branding settings and the Entra branding. Here's an interesting thing. Yeah. So in ADFS, I can have a disclaimer of 1,000 characters. In Entra, 256 characters. Trying to get your legal department to be more on point. There's a nice challenge for you.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, ChatGPT might help. Please shorten this to at least 256 characters, yes. Yeah. User principal name suffixes and Entra custom domain names. And of course, the Entra Connect Sync configuration. So is password right back on? Do we do things for self-service password reset? Do we do things with soft and hard matching, things like that? So the custom domain names I told you in Microsoft Entra, and then you would know which ones you need. Password expiration it's been a hot topic this month, again. Yeah. We now have NIST guidance that says, please do not require end users to change their passwords. Cool.
If they do not only use a password for authentication.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, we only get that snippet, but you need to do MFA everywhere.
There's 2 sentences in that regulation.
Well, actually, there's 78 pages in that regulation.
Yeah, but about password change, it's the full sequence.
When I'm in bed and I'm trying to sleep, then I have it on my nightstand and I'm going to read further, and I always fall asleep. It's cool stuff. It's interesting because in ADFS talks to Active Directory. So if your password is expired, ADFS will know. By default, Entra will not know if your AD password is expired. You have to tell Entra to get that information. You have to set a setting on Entra to allow Entra Connect Sync to sync the value and Entra to actually do something with the value. The interesting part is it requires everyone at least to change their password once to get that triggered. So if you have a password expiration window of 90 days, you now have a project of at least 90 days. As a consultant, this is gold.
Yeah. And it's not just the password expiration, it's also the account expiration that does not sync to Entra ID.
Yep.
Entra ID. Well, make sure that you document everything. Make sure that it is all on paper, that you can find back what you did when you did it, just in case some things break and you have to do it again.
Yes. Yes, and that will help you with the thing that, as IT pros, we all find really dull, really hard, and that is communicating to end users. There is, in larger organization, always someone that could help you from a communication department, but the core is something that we have to come up with. And when you go from ADFS to Entra, these are the areas that you want to communicate to people, because anything on this list might change for them for the worse. Well, at least that's what they'll think.
And then make sure that you communicate. Make sure that everybody knows that things are changing before they start complaining.
Yep. So the thing is that, and I love this quote, that if you fail to prepare, then you're prepared to fail, is make sure that if you want to use anything that is P1 functionality, which includes password write-back, yes, that you have sufficient licenses for the people in your organization. You might think that only a couple of people are using ADFS, but you have no clue. Well, luckily there's a trick to get that information out, but get that information over a sufficient period of time so that it's really accurate, and then get those licenses out. Of course, if you are running an older version of Entra Connect, shame on you. Please upgrade first. And of course, install that Entra Connect Health Agent for ADFS on your ADFS servers and your web application proxies. The fun part is that it will mess up Microsoft's reporting on how much your ADFS is used anyway, because it will do a synthetic transaction every 30 minutes. So why are people still using my ADFS? It's no longer in use. Well, it's that agent. If you're still suspicious of why you're seeing about 50 authentications per day still, and you can't quite seem to see what application that is for, well, that's that one. And of course, stream the ADFS sign-in logs to a log analytics workspace. And let me show you how you do that.
I think we don't have time for that.
Well, it's a short demo. Okay. Here, let me see. It's, where's my mouse? The longest it's going to take is get my mouse somewhere in... Here it is. There it is. And I have to guess show more. Here we go. And then it is on monitoring and health. Here we go. Then we have the diagnostic settings. And as you can see, I already have some settings, but I can add one more. And here is the ADFS sign-in logs. Is it on top these days?
Yeah, there it is.
Here it is. Cool. And then I can send it to an event hub, a partner solution, a storage account. But if you send it to Log Analytics workspace, then you can have KQL logins on your ADFS sign-in logs, which I think is really cool. Let's see.
Oh, at least it allows you to keep track of your logs for a longer time than just the 30 days that are there by default.
Yes, and there are implementations of ADFS running at customers that have the maximum size of logs configured and still run through them in 3 to 4 hours. So yes, this might save you bacon, but cost you a lot of money. There is a migration wizard for ADFS, which I want to show you, because what you can do is get your ADFS relying party trusts all the way to Entra. Microsoft will, if you do that Entra Connect Health Agent, it will tell you if you can just click it over. And actually, you don't have to click it over. They will do it for you. So it's really easy migration. The only thing you're left with is that pesky Microsoft Office 365 identity platform relying party trust. Well, that's Microsoft Entra, and there's a couple of ways that you can do that, and I typically do from right to left. So I start on a per user basis. Then I go through my custom domain names, and then we've shown you how to inventory those. And then I set it up with my Entra Connect server to reflect it for the entire tenant. And the way you can do that with per user is with the stage rollout. And let's get to the portal again, because this is in
hybrid.
Can we see it yet?
Let's find the mouse.
Here
yes,
it is.
It's there.
It's in Entra Connect under hybrid management. Connect Sync, because this stuff doesn't work with Cloud Sync. Then stage rollout for managed user sign in. And then we can have password handshake on. And yes. And then I can have the managed groups. And I can do a stage rollout group, for instance, add that group and be done. Or I could do all company, anything like that. So it is something that you can enable, and then only people in the group will get switched from ADFS to password hash sync. So it doesn't enable password hash sync. You have already done that in Entra Connect Health. What we're doing is we're actually enabling that so that Entra Connect for that user no longer redirects to ADFS. Just takes it into Entra. And then, of course, there's decommissioning ADFS. As I said, please clean this up nicely, because Zero Trust is about making everything as tidy as possible. If you ask me, this is tidying up stuff. And this is the process that I use, the chronicle order of steps that I use to really get rid of ADFS once and for all. So from the virtualization platform, from backups, from Entra Connect Health, this automatically happens after 30 days, but you get an error message every day. So I'm sure you won't forget that.
You don't want that.
Then, of course, don't forget to drink some beer with your product team after you're done, because everybody forgets this step, and it's such a shame.
Yeah, have a big party when you're done. Huh?
Yep. And if you were wondering what we were talking about, then this is basically what it was. If you spend less than 30% on your inventory, please think about your inventory process again, because you probably haven't inventoried enough. No ADFS and Entra before you start. Communication is key, obviously. And then there's tools, either in P1. Actually, this is all P1 except for the Entra stage rollout. And after that, don't forget to celebrate. We recommend beer, but if you have something else that is culturally appropriate, please use that. And with that, we would like to say thank you.